Yeah, that will be fine. Yes.
Okay, recording is started. And let me know when to start. I think Aparaj has also joined, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think we can get started. We are already anyway 5 minutes up, 8. So let
No,
us.
has Aparajit joined?
Yes. Yes.
Mahodaya, I'm here.
Uttam, uttam. Sounds good. So that's good. So Aparajit, wherever you want to add something, feel free to. Mittalji, Sangeetaji, and Vijayaji. I think Vijayaji, you have one main slide for herself, and then anywhere else you can add. So Sarvebhya Namo Namaha, Sarvebhya Ramanavami Subhashayaha. And so there were a few queries that came up after attending the first few classes, after your kids attending the first few classes, and few could have come from kids and few from parents as well. So we wanted to address these queries, and I'll just show you the list of queries that we've got. So number one is why there is so much to memorize in these classes. Can't we memorize less and do more of logical thinking and other stuff, right? So that's one query. And number two, my son or daughter is finding it difficult to focus in these classes because these are totally, we have like 3+ hours, and sometimes they get bored, they switch off their camera. So this is an issue that you guys are having. That's number two. Number three, why aren't you teaching like Bhagavad Gita or Sahasranamam? This is actually a class to help them understand Bharatiya Samskriti and Hinduism. So why not like the standard stuff that is being done? What are these things? What is the point in learning what you're teaching instead of learning stuff that is actually standard that you would find in other places, right? And then finally, why are we enforcing a few activities before class, like leaving some food for in India we've asked them if they have a cow in their house, which most of us don't these days, but feed the cow or feed the birds or water a plant. And then we have this Pitru Vandanam, to do namaskaram to parents, and then also to take a shower and be ready and do some mini prayer before the class starts and so on. So these are things that we are asking kids to do. So why are we asking kids to do these? So these are some questions that have come up. Maybe this would be a good time for me to like break for a second. There are a few parents here. If parents have other questions beyond this, right, we can actually make a note of those and add those along with the questions. So far, these have been the queries. We would love to hear from the parents. We can add to this list and then try to answer them in the session. Any questions, you can unmute yourself and then ask your question. Parents, have any questions?
Hey, one question that I had was, totally unrelated, is what I want the details of the next school that you're going to have later. How much is it in the planning and how much is it actually going on? Because I have a decision to make to whether send my daughter to normal school or I send her here and she learns from here. So yeah,
Sure.
those details will be helpful because I have to fight with like 3-4 members in my family to stop her going to the school. So I need some hard data for that.
Sure.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Sachinji, where are you located right now? What
Mumbai.
city? Mumbai. Okay. Very good. Okay. Sure. Yeah. So we'll also talk about that. Made a note of that. Anything else? Anybody else?
This is Prashant, Arjun's father.
Huh?
so far, it has been fantastic, sir. My son has thoroughly enjoyed it. So somehow I found about your course and we have really enjoyed it. I'm thankful to God that I have been able to put my son into this. Just similar question to what Sachin has asked. I'm not sure I'll be able to pull out my son from a regular school, but this has to be a continuous process, right? It cannot stop in 2 months. We want this inculcation, this education to continue further. So maybe 1 hour daily, even during regular school or something, some kind of a, or some kind of an online this thing, if it is on a continuous basis, that would be great.
Sure. Yeah, it is. It is going to be a regular school. Even what we are teaching right now, this is not the after school program that you typically see in places like Balavihar or the Sai Samitis, or even we have um, here Swamiji, they have a after school program as well. So many after school program you would see, what we are doing is not after school program, it's full-fledged school program, and we're giving a
Balaji, is it only
Yeah.
me or everybody is not hearing you that clearly? It's sort of
I've been having, like, since this corona thing, I've been having some issues with my internet connectivity. Is it
actually,
getting better?
no, I think it's where you're located. I think if you lean forward, it doesn't sound that great.
Okay. Is it okay now?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
Yeah,
This is much better. Yeah.
Okay, I'll stop leaning forward then. So what I was trying to say was, this is not an after-school program. So if you are thinking that you are enrolling your kid for an after-school program, where they would learn some Bhagavad Gita or some stotrams, this is not it. This is actually a full-fledged program. It's a full school, and because it's a full school, it has to have a decent amount of time and attention from the kids. And we have chosen this when you actually do school, you will have maybe an extra hour and a half that will add to this. So
your audio is breaking up again. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
it's very hard to get. Yeah.
Do you want to use the phone instead of the?
Yeah, maybe I'll dial in then.
Yeah, try and call in.
Yeah.
Maybe this answer, one of you can give, right? So and then I'll dial in meanwhile. So the answer to this question of whether it's a full school or an after school program.
Yeah, excuse me. Maybe you can switch off the video to conserve bandwidth, and then maybe the audio can get a bit better.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah.
Yeah, you can try that. Everyone can just switch off their videos. That will conserve a bit of bandwidth on this.
Has it gotten better now? I've switched off my video.
Yes.
Okay.
So much better.
Okay, that's good. So I was just saying, this is not an after-school program. This is actually a full-fledged school, but it's online, right? Typically, you will find a lot of after-school programs that are around, like Pragya or Balavihar and others. This is not an after-school program, and this is also not a program that is related only to the purpose of Vedanta or Bhakti. It's not a spiritual program. I mean, there is a spiritual part to it, but it's not a spiritual program. I just wanted to make sure that we clear that up front. So that is why you see that the kids, we have taken a reasonable amount of time to understand if your kids can actually stay that long, and if they can, they can be good candidates for the actual online school that's coming up starting next academic year. So just wanted to clear that. Although other questions we will answer later, but I thought that that's a very important question that can be cleared because the subsequent slides that I'm going to show have have this assumption that this is actually a full-time school like any other school. So this is an alternate to the regular school.
Balaji, can I just add something here?
Yes, please. Yeah.
I just wanted to tell you that also if you're considering homeschooling, it's something that you should not be so intimidated by. If you're ever considering pulling your kids out of school, because it's totally doable. And because you just look at, what do your children get in a school? They are, I guess 30 to 40 kids in a class, and they're there all day, and it's like ignorance. You don't know what's going on, so you feel good about it. And here you are intimidated because you have to sort of go through the day. So we can that can be a separate discussion, but you should not be intimidated by home education, or embarking on home education. I think if you feel like that's an option you would like to embark on, you should just try it. And worst case, if it doesn't work out, you can always go back to school. Anyway, that's it.
So this is Mahadevan. One thing related to that. Uh, see, we are ready for a full-time school like this, but the problem I'm seeing is because it is online. This is too much online time, and they're not able to pay attention. And I don't think it's also good for the kids to be staring at the screen for so long. Right now, apart from this, they also have their regular school, so they're doing about 5 hours a day of online learning from 10 to 3. And my son is saying, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore. Okay, so I think we should reconsider the online part of it, because it is, I think, too difficult for kids this age to be able to spend time online doing this.
Yeah. So just to quickly answer that, Madhavan, right now you have this school plus online school. Given that you're thinking of, currently you have whatever we are
5
doing,
hours.
yeah,
5
and then
hours
you have
totally.
your online school. So I understand that can be pretty heavy. Also, the idea of having the school online, it's not just going to be online all the time. Now, we are going to have a decent amount of time offline as well, meaning we are thinking of running 2 camps during the year, right? So you would have a decent amount of time offline, but the online component cannot be eliminated, given that we are all in
Correct,
different
but
places. And only,
I feel it cannot be more than 2 hours a day. I don't think they can manage doing more than 2 hours a day of online learning.
no, if it is the only school, maybe we can start. We don't have to do the 5-hour thing that we were earlier thinking. Maybe we can start with 3 and then slowly increase it. But 2 hours would be too short for us to do the actual school. We can, or the other thing that we can also do is think about like having longer breaks. So we could do like an hour and a half and then break for half an hour, then hour and a half. We'll think about ways of actually giving them enough rest between classes and resting their eyes and so on. But the online component cannot be as low as 2 hours. Then you run into the risk of your kid not learning enough.
Yeah. So I think maybe Balaji, let me try and rephrase this, right? I think what we're suggesting is that 3 hour or 2 hour of learning time is not enough. Now, given how much we want to cover, right? Uh, and the way to maybe adapt is, like you said, the options are maybe give longer breaks or break the classes into maybe 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, or maybe even something like, if parents are willing to teach in person, then use some of the materials. So parents can do stuff online and then teach the kid offline or things like that. So these are all a number of options that that we would need to consider. But I think the key point that Balaji is making is that this is an alternative to real school, and this is intended to be deep and real learning. This is not a compromise, not a consolation, not a 2 hour, 1 hour a weekend you go into learn some bhajans and Bhagavad Gita and feel good about it. We are serious about creating an alternative education platform.
No, absolutely. See, that part, I'm completely bought in, but I'm having real concerns about the screen time and the continuous online nature. And even if it's
That's completely legitimate, Madhav. We are, in fact, my younger daughter had the same issue as well, like staring at the computer, and she's only 5. After 3 hours, like first couple of days she had headaches and she couldn't finish the entire classes. So we do need to strategize and figure out how to solve that. So that part I completely agree with, but I don't know what the solution is given the situation we are in right now. I think we can maybe
Uh,
collectively brainstorm and figure it out.
One solution, what I've done, Mittal, is we don't have screen time otherwise, we don't have any TV time, or the kids never had a phone. I have a 20-year-old who just has had a phone for the first time in his life, and an 18-year-old who doesn't, or a 17-year-old who still doesn't have a phone. And we don't have a TV in the house. And that's how I have managed to reduce screen time otherwise.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, and honestly, that's extraordinary, right? Like, I don't think even in our own life, even if we wanted to, we don't have the discipline or the ability to be able to enforce that. I'm being just brutally honest, just given the reality. Our kids don't have phones, but yeah, we do have TV in the house, and they will watch, half an hour to 1 hour of TV a day. So that's just us. And again, maybe that's something that we can work on. But I would say generally the situation you describe, I mean, you are obviously exemplary and extraordinary in the way that you implemented that. I don't know if that's really doable for most of us.
It can be a gradual process, right? It won't happen day one, but as they understand the joy in learning this way and the advantages in having breaks, like you're not cooped up in a class for 8 hours at a stretch, it will happen gradually. It won't happen on day one, because this is the first year that they are going to be doing something different, right?
No, but there are also studies published on the effects of the screen time on their brain. See, if you're otherwise telling them, hey, no screens, which, my wife does quite a bit, no TV, no phone, if we are limiting screen otherwise, and suddenly we are telling them, hey, screen time, you do the screen time 2 hours, 2 hours, that doesn't sound right, right?
No, we have a policy of using the computer for education purposes only. So we use electronics for education. We don't use electronics for entertainment.
No, but it is still the same screen, and it affects their eyesight and their brain activity.
That is, I guess this is
It's the same, whether it's TV screen or this computer screen.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this, Mahadev and Mahadev. I think we have two conflicting priorities here. A, we want to be able to have 4 or 5 hours of learning time a day. I think we all agree that that is needed in order to cover what we want to cover. At the same time, the conflict is that 4 to 5 hours on screen is not great for young eyes and young brain. How do we solve this? Like, what's the resolution out of this? What do you think?
No, I don't know, right? That is a problem, right? And if we don't solve this problem, then I'm not too comfortable having them do this, basically.
Okay.
Yeah,
and that's why I'm bringing it up. So if it is some half an hour and then you say you go read some book or do some activity, come back. So we have to come up with ideas to overcome this. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult.
I completely agree. We have to come up with a blending learning, not completely online. Something that they can do at by themselves, something they can read, and then have a follow-up classes on what they have material they've learned. So we have to think about how we
Since
can.
memorization is a big part of what is being taught, would it make sense? Do you think it would be feasible to take the memorization part offline? Meaning, they read through the whatever shloka a couple of times in class, and then the teacher sends us audio, which actually for Jigyasa we have been getting some. We get the audio, and then the parents would have to play it. So they don't have to watch a screen, but they hear it and they learn. So I don't know if that is going to work out well.
It might work. That happens for music class also, right? The teacher is sending you audio recordings. They're
Correct.
giving the class notes. So it is working for the music class.
Correct.
So that might probably work.
Yeah, we probably have to look at the subject and see what can be taught with the audio versus what we need to do a video online stuff. So that's definitely something to look at.
No, that's a great idea. Like what Archana Bhagini came up with is a great idea. To have the memorization part offline, or even like without they looking into the screen, right? They you don't have to have the video on, or we can think about like how to solve the memorization part. but even after that, you would be left with like about 3 to 4 hours of learning that needs to be done, and we need to think about how to make that happen. You know, we obviously we are not saying we have all the answers. All that we are saying is, here is the syllabus that can help decolonize our education. As to the fact that, you know, we don't have enough population in one particular city where we can have teachers, and of course you need qualified teachers to teach as well. We don't have answers to those questions. We don't have scenarios like that either. We are all like very few spread far and wide, right? So we'll have to kind of figure out how to solve this. So there are a lot of issues that our kids are exposed to when they go to regular school, right? So especially in the US and in cities like Bombay in India, kids are exposed to a lot of evils, right? We may also want to think about like how a minimized version of the screen time evil is better than some of those other evils that we see in school, right? So you need to maybe weigh these two and then make a decision.
I agree.
Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead with these questions. We have got some answers here, but before we talk about these questions, you need to understand the high level classical Indian system. And then I want Vijaya Bhagini to go over this real quick, right? So, you know, what does the classical Indian system entail? And Bhagini, you want to go over,
Yeah.
explain? Yeah.
So basically, even in the West, they have something called the trivium, and which is what most classical systems have been using, where they divide up the K to 12 education into three phases of the early grammar phase, and the middle phase, as is put here, is the logic phase, and then you have the rhetoric phase, which is the later years in high school. So the early grammar phase is for memorizing, and not all. In India also, we've started getting more discovery based education, like science based on discovery, things like that. Whereas the classical way is to just kind of commit a lot to memory, because this is the only time the kids don't know logic, neither can they form arguments and analyze at high levels abstract concepts and things like that. So the only thing that they're suited to do is memorize. And the worst part is that this ability to memorize diminishes after 10, 11. It sort of continuously diminishes into adulthood, and in adulthood you basically cannot, you're like a rock, you cannot actually memorize anything. So this phase should be used for memorization, and Balaji can talk about why it's important to memorize. And I also feel that at least from little experience that I've had with raising two boys, is that when you commit so many things to memory at an early age, then you can recall these ideas and these facts and references really quickly when you're making an argument in whichever field you are in. So that's very important. And then you go on to developing logic, when the kids start asking questions as to why this and why that. Then you start giving them frameworks of logic which they can then use, and then in the advanced phase they can be introduced to more abstract ideas, concepts, make an argumentation of a certain kind, be effective in debates, and have a strong, and use the strong foundation that they have had in logic and memory to make these these argumentations and analysis. So that's basically what I wanted to say.
Bhagini, you're going to recommend this book, right? Well
Oh,
trained.
right. So there is actually, yeah. I mean, of course, the colonized people that we are, that includes myself. A good book would, be The Well-Trained Mind on Classical Education and what it, So if you want a reference from a modern Western, sort of worldview, Drishti. This book is a very well-known, very, it's one of the bestsellers sort of thing. It's called The Well-Trained Mind on Classical Education. And interestingly, this is exactly what our traditional gurukulams also did. Initial years, they would just commit everything to memory because, and then they would go on to teaching them some of the other Vedangas and other Shastras. And this whatever you've committed to memory would always be a good resource that these people could pull out from, at a pinch. So that's been the Indian classical education as well, with a very similar sort of idea of what to teach when.
On this one, Balaji, I wanted to actually ask you if you know of any similar book. I know you vaguely mentioned, I think, U.S. Iyer's own personal experience and his biography in which he describes his own education, or Subramania Bharti, who had a vision of education. But is there anything that to we can read from our own people about how we used to teach?
Yeah, that's a good question. My knowledge on this in this area is from three books that I've read. Unfortunately, all three are in not in English; they are in Tamil, which is my mother tongue. So one is actually the seven series or 7-volume series called Devathin Kural, written by um, uh, Ra Ganapati, and it is actually written based on or exactly it's a transcription of lectures by the Shankaracharya of Kanchi, who's called Paramacharya. Uh, and so that's a very good source for understanding what was taught in schools in the pre-British time period. Another interesting book that I read was Uwe Swaminath Iyer's En Charitram, which is actually his autobiography. There, he has really photographic memory. He has actually given a lot of information on what he learned when he was in school, when he was 5 years old. And I tell this story to multiple people, where when I read this book about maybe 15 years ago or so. When I read his book, and it was like late in the night, and reading the book, all by myself, uh, I realized, I was it's a very interesting experience. I experienced a lot of fear after reading it. I was very concerned, like, what have I learned so far? I was maybe in my early or mid 30s at the time, and I was like wondering, like, I have spent so many years in this planet, and I've not actually read what Uwe Sominath had read when he was like 5 or 6 years old. There is so much information that was taught to him when he was that young in school. So that's a very good book. He has given a reasonable. It's once again, it's an autobiography. He's not actually given a catalog of courses and so on. But we read it, you will get a reasonable understanding. And the third is Subramania Bharati's um, series of articles that he has written. He's written 2 articles. He's written a poem on this as to how do you reconstruct Indian education and give up on Macaulay education. And this he wrote in the early 1900s, right? And it's really interesting how, he thought at that time Macaulay education was a useless form of education. We don't end up learning anything really deep and so on, right? So those are three sources. Another source that you can get some information, I'm sure Mithalji you've read, is Dharampal's Beautiful Tree, where he has given a list of courses that were taught as well.
Yeah, so I was going to talk about the three sources in English that I personally found useful, but yeah, they don't lay it out exactly like this, in that the system and the courses and all that, but more sort of Dharampal's book, A Beautiful Tree, is a description more or less of the education system in the society and the schools at the time. It does have a little bit of what they're actually teaching in the pre-British times or in the British times through British archives, the records maintained by the British. So that's one. Another really good one is by A.S. Altekar, and it is also called Education in Ancient India. So I do have I do have a copy of that, where again more a sweeping overview of education all the way from schools to universities in ancient India, and it does have some details about what they used to teach. And the third one is Foundations of Indian Culture by Maharshi Aurobindo. Now, Maharshi Aurobindo has done a lot of thinking and writing on conceptualizing and describing what a decolonized or Indian rooted education system would look like, and his ideas on what should be taught and things like that. So again, more of a vision thing in the broader context of Indian culture. But that's the three books in English that I would say are a little bit more accessible. But all three of them are much broader than the one that Vijay Bhagini's put in front of me, which is exactly focusing on an actual system of school education.
Awesome. So let's move on to the next slide.
One request to Mithalji and Balaji ji, if you could just give me the names of the books that y'all just mentioned. And
Yeah, maybe we can. I can type it up and send it to Sangeeta ji, and she's got a way to distribute these names out to you
yep,
guys.
great. And would you all be sharing the PPT that you have just?
Yes, yeah. So we'll be sharing it.
Thanks. Yep.
So the next thing that Vijayaji covered this, and this is I'm trying to answer the question on the memorization part. Why is there so much memorization? And some of you have brought this up. The idea of memorization, by the way, is coming back. The book that Vijayaji talked about, the idea of classical education even getting revived in the West, is something that you can see. And I've got this Forbes magazine article that also refers to some research that's been done. Memorization, especially at an early age, is going to be very useful. And the fact that the memorization is coming back now, there are now memory bees that are starting all over right now. In fact, Nitalji had sent me a book which I have not completed. Read a few pages in that, Mithalji, and that book is on this specific topic about how memory is kind of the next in thing, right? And as in the West, they have all these uh, the flings with these concepts. They come and go, right? And like how plastic came and became very big. Now they're trying to get rid of plastic, and they're asking us to eat in plantain leaves that we were doing earlier. So similarly, the West actually in the 50s and 60s, doctors were recommending cigarettes, and now doctors are asking you not to smoke. They found out that the cigarette is injurious to health. So West has these flings with things, right? So the point I'm trying to say is memory, which was actually eliminated by the West earlier, thinking that memorization is not good, you should not be memorizing multiplication tables, you should not be memorizing anything. Now they're coming back and saying, hey, memorization is really good. So that movement is starting to bloom in the West right now. Not that that makes any difference to you and I, but still, to know that modern uh, uh, science is also like starting to point at this, and they're starting to do research. But one important thing I wanted to point out, and by the way, we have a neurologist among as well. Archana ji is also on the call. Archana Bhagini, if you wanted to add something to what I'm saying here, please feel free to. She's an accomplished neurologist from Stanford, so I'm sure she would have a view on all this from the memory standpoint and so on. But let me maybe complete the slide, and Archana ji, if you want to add something to this, that'll be very helpful. And then
Okay.
the other important thing is the idea of building a walking library in ourselves. This is something that you can see in our education system, the pre-Macaulay education system, where you may have, if you have like granddads or uncles, you may have seen this in them as well, where they'll be able to quote from several scriptures, even like they would have got several even English books memorized, like Shakespeare and so on, right? So they have this idea of knowing all the books by heart, and they commit all books to memory. And this, when I was reading, Uwe Swaminathan here also, uh, he had like such good memory, like photographic memory. He could actually pick. He's like a library. He could just go and pick anything he wants depending on what topic he's talking about. So it's not only that he had everything committed to the memory, he also had ultimate recall. So he could recall any reference from any book that he has read, and he has read like hundreds and thousands of books, and all that is sitting in his memory. So that's an amazing quality. So he doesn't have to go and look at Google. Not that Google has all the answers, right? A lot of what we are learning, you may not be able to find elsewhere on the internet, because a lot of this is currently getting digitized as we speak. So that's a very important thing. So these are two different types of mind powers, right? The ability for you to retain what you have learned is called medha, so that you are able to repeat everything. That's in our shastras call it medha. And the ability to recall, which is also very important. We will also teach that to kids, so that once they memorize all this, they'll be able to pull up stuff from different parts, right? So these help the kids gain that intelligence that's required. Not just in this field. I mean, very interesting thing that I noted in, I want to go back to the book by Uwe Swaminathan. He was able to not just because of his ability to recall, he was able to recall different incidents from his life, and he would also tell you what day, what year, and so on, because he had so much in his memory, and his memory was so good. He did not forget a lot of his childhood, which is very amazing. Not that he was writing any daily notes, diary of his own, but he had that kind of ability. That was also like amazing to see. And a lot of our I've seen this in several of those people who have that kind of um, uh, initial elementary education, where they had a lot of memorization and so on. They are able to recall things. And this, I believe, I've not seen this anywhere, but I believe, and Achanaji could help me um, with some scientific data to back this up. I believe that this can actually eliminate a lot of mental diseases like Alzheimer's and so on at a later point in your life, where you have memory loss and stuff like that, right? So this can be very helpful to kids. The other thing that we see in kids, right, especially kids in the West, they have a huge difficulty in sitting in one place for long periods of time, which is a very important thing in our shastras, right? Before you do any kind of tapasya. Tapasya does not mean just sitting in one place and focused on meditation. Any kind of tapasya requires your mind to be calmed down, and for you to have the ability to focus for long stretches of time. And this memorization uh, uh, teaching helps you first get that asana siddhi, where you're able to sit down somewhere and then go on memorizing. That's the simplest thing that you can do, because you're just repeating, and you're also learning how to sit and do something from one place, and not jumping around, and not getting hyper about hyper and running around, right? So that's something that you see among kids, especially in the West. The Indian kids are a little better in this aspect, but still this is something that we can fix. And we all need to make a sankalpa that it's okay, our kids are going to find it difficult initially, but once they learn how to sit, that's going to be useful for them in the future, right? And then the other thing that we need to know is, from a shastric standpoint, every aspect of shastra has a grammar to it, and then a vocabulary gets created based on the grammar, right? Whether it is tarka shastra, or whether it is vyakaranam, whether it's even dance or music, all these shastras, right? Even in the West also, you could think about it like if you want to learn a language, first you need to learn the syntax, and then you can use the language, right? So this initial grammar is something that you need to have ready in your mind. You cannot just, if you want to write a program, you cannot be looking for syntax for how do I write a if then condition, or how do I write a for loop. You cannot just keep referring to it over and over again. That needs to come to you as second nature. And what happens with these shastras is these shastras are very complex. As you continue to learn further, a lot of it needs to be committed to memory. A lot of those definitions and the meta language. So definitions are called samyas, and meta language is called paribhasha. The paribhasha and samya needs to be in your head, etched. That way you don't go back and refer everything from the first principle. So this is a very important aspect of shastras, and this can also be seen in Western education also. We are okay with not going back and referring to for loop syntax, or if then syntax, and so on. But if you can relate to that, this is something similar. So just wanted to give you a few reasons about why memorization is important, right? And Archana ji, if you want to add something, please feel free to.
I just wanted to mention that maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, there was this study, probably 3 years ago, there was this study that came out. Some of you may be aware of it, where somebody looked at these Veda reciting scholars at their brains. They did a MRI of their brains and compared it with others. So those who had a lot of recitation and memorization, and there were differences. There was greater amount of gray matter in certain areas of the brain that were that are thought to be useful in memory as well as in thinking. And we don't understand, in spite of all that, the study that has gone into the brain, we understand very limited amounts of it. But it was very interesting to see how, years of memorization and reciting, it's not possible to separate out whether this was only memorization, whether it was reciting, whether it was chanting, because they all go hand in hand. But that was interesting, and that made the news actually. So some of you may have actually seen it. So clearly, this does help the brain develop in certain ways than if you don't do this kind of memorization. And one would infer that these are useful for the brain because hearing of how much such people are able to, as you just heard, commit to memory as well as use it. And I really, at this point in life, I really value memory, because I can see what happens as it kind of erodes a little bit. That was it.
I'd just like to add one more thing, Balaji. The hard part here is, in fact, if you go out, you will actually not find, even if you find teachers, you will find it very difficult to find a teacher who teaches you this basic grammar and vocabulary in any of these subjects. In fact, if you take Sangeetam today, it's very difficult to find a teacher that will start from Sarigama all the way till Geetam or Varnam. Once you reach there, you can find many teachers. Yeah, and this is the very painful part of teaching kids the aksharam and learning to read and write and speak and just the basic building blocks. In fact, I started learning Sanskritam because I couldn't find a teacher for my kids when they were young. I wanted to, I was willing to do anything, right? I was homeschooling them and willing to do it, but nobody would teach them the basic. Nobody had the patience, and I could not find a teacher that would actually sit down and teach them the building blocks of of this. And similarly with music, and it's only gotten worse in the past few years. So this is something that you will confront as parents when you want to teach any kala, any shastra you want to have your children learn. You will find it very hard to get through that initial phase Once you've gotten through that initial phase, you'll find very many teachers who are willing to take, very many good teachers who are willing to take on the kids. But the initial part, actually, you will not find people.
And thanks to Aparajit, I'm really amazed by how patient he is with the kids, and after having done a master's in Sanskritam, he would have had other career options. The fact that he's willing to spend his time with kids, kudos to him for helping us out here. So quickly moving on, we only have like 10 more minutes. This might take maybe a little bit more than that. So guys who do not have the time, you can drop off and you can hear from the recording, but we'll try to maybe wrap it up 10 after the hour or so. So the next thing is, what are we teaching, right? What did our forefathers learn in those schools, the pre-Macaulay schools, right? So our Vidya was broken down into 18 parts. It's called Ashtadasha Vidya, Ashtadasha Vidya Sthanams, right? Which covered both spiritual and secular education, right? And it had the 4 Vedas, the 6 Vedangas, the 4 Upangas, and the 4 Upavedas. Here the focus is not to teach the Vedas. Vedas Vedas are the source of all knowledge. It's a treasure trove of knowledge. However, a lot of it is very cryptic, and a lot of it's only utilized now in recitation. And the Vedangas are the 6 angas of the Vedas, with which you understand the mantras and so on. And these form the basis for the initial education of language, logic, mathematics, and so on. So you could think of Vedangas as the kind of equivalent to what our kids do in school today, right? And in Vedangas, you have Siksha, which is actually phonetics, how to pronounce, right? And then we have Kalpa, which is actually procedures. We are not doing like Vedic procedures. However, Kalpa contains mathematics. The Shulba Sutras are all in Kalpa Sutras. And then we have Jyotisha, which is once again mathematics and astronomy. And Siksha, Kalpo, Vyakaranam. Niruktam is actually the thesaurus or dictionary. And we are covering that as well. And the Nirukta Grantha that we are using is Amarakosha, right? Which is a very standard book, which was used in all our schools in the pre-Macaulay times. And even now, Amarakosha is the standard book that is used in Veda Patashalas and so on. And every student of Sanskrit will have to go through some learning of Amarakosha. Jyotisham Tata. Then the last one is Chanda Shastra. So and Vyakaranam. Vyakaranam is the grammar part, right? Or Shabda Shastra. And Vyakaranam, we are not teaching Vyakaranam from Panini. We are teaching Vyakaranam like how it is taught in modern education today, like teaching A, E, and so on. But we are at the same time, we are teaching the Paninian Sutras, and we've also started that for your kids. So if you look at the program, it is like revolving around these 6 Vedangas for the most part. So it has got grammar. So we are getting them to memorize Ashtadhyayi of Panini, and then we are also getting them to memorize Amarakosha, which is the Nirukta Grantha, and we are also getting them to memorize some Ganitam, which technically is part of the Jyotisha aspect of Vedangas and the Kalpa aspect of Vedangas. So I just wanted to show you that this is the area that we are covering. And here's a slide on what are we memorizing. So Ashtadhyayi is actually a very important, or the most important grammatical text in India. And now a lot of different modern educational fields have popped up from Ashtadhyayi. An area called computational linguistics is supposed to have come from Ashtadhyayi. Somewhere I learned that even psychology has come from Ashtadhyayi, which is very interesting. And there are other, like computer programming has a lot of connection to Ashtadhyayi. Somebody who understands Ashtadhyayi well can go in and do programming with a lot of ease. We had an orientation program where Vijaya Bhagini's son, Siddharth, who is now in Stanford, he came and talked about how Ashtadhyayi has helped them in his programming, learning programming languages. Right? And then Amarakosha is actually the thesaurus. So there is a tradition in India to memorize the thesaurus. Of course, when I say memorize the thesaurus, this thesaurus is not extensive, because you cannot actually create a very extensive thesaurus in Sanskritam, because there are millions of combinations of words that you can create from the root words. But certain standard words for each noun is put into this book called the Amarakosha. And by memorizing that, your knowledge about or your vocabulary is significantly increased. So if you think about, like, for instance, the word for sun in Sanskritam, I'm sure you can come up with like 3 or 4 words for sun, sun, SU and sun, from your own mother tongue. But Amarakosha will give you like 50 or 60 words for sun, right? You compare that with like the number of words in English for the word sun, you would just get one word, sun, or the moon. There's only one word. In Sanskritam, you have like the option of, first of all, creating infinite words for the sun, for sun or moon, and some standard 50 or 60 words that actually gives you a lot of vocabulary and flexibility in tomorrow when the kids start creating their own poems or essays and so on, they can knowing that level of vocabulary makes it very interesting, and makes the essay very scholarly, and or your poem very scholarly, and so on. So it's very important to learn the Amarakosha that way. And there's also the saying, it says Ashtadhyayi Jaganmata Amarakosho Jagatpita. For you to learn Shastram, can be any Shastram, even Adi Shankara's Prasthanatrayam, if you want to read, or any Shastram that you want to read. If you do not have a good grasp of Ashtadhyayi and Amarakosha, you will not have a complete view of the Shastram. So it's for you to learn Shastram, it is like the mother and father, these two granthas. So that's why there's the saying called Ashtadhyayi Jaganmata Amarakosho Jagatpita. And then the next thing that we are teaching the kids from a memorization standpoint is the Panchanga elements, right? We are helping them understand the Indian calendar, which is a lot more accurate than the Western calendar. And the Indian calendar has a very logical 5-part system, which is called the Panchanga. And for each one of those, like if you want to know the nakshatram, you need to know all the names of the nakshatram. If you want to know all the 12, if you want to know the tithi, you need to know all the 16 kalas, right? For you to know all the tithis. Then if you want to know the masas, you need to know all the 12 masas and so on. So we are helping them memorize those as well. And I don't think that started yet. That will start as well here soon. Then the next thing is Gunana Koshtakam, which is actually memorizing tables. This is something that the modern education system has given up now, but I'm sure all of us have gone through memorization of tables, which was actually a kind of a vestigial learning from what our forefathers had learned. So they taught us that in our schools as well. And we will go in the online school, we'll go all the way up to the 24 table. And we will also teach them fraction tables. Fraction tables were also practiced in India. And if you go talk to some scholar who's like a little old, he can give you quick answers to multiplying like 1/8 5 times, 10 times, and so on and so forth. The quick answers on fractions as well. And then
So actually,
finally,
Srivarya, sorry, very quickly, not just scholars, my own father amazes me till today. He's 78 years old and he knows those fraction tables and they taught them in his school.
yeah,
So
very good.
this is something that we lost literally in just the last generation because my generation did not learn this in school.
Yeah, I didn't learn them either in school, but
Yeah,
you know,
but my
something that
father did, and he still to date he remembers them and he uses them, and his mental math ability is astonishing.
okay. Yeah, so you're a, no wonder you're a chip of the old block then, right there. So
Well, I didn't learn any of that. I wish I had, but yeah, at least if we can reconnect our kids to that, then that would be amazing.
and finally we are teaching devata stotrams, right? And we you know, typically when you go to a after school program, or when you go to a very sampradayic place, like let's say you joined a patashala from Kanchi Math or Sringeri Math or some Gers Matham, or wherever, right? So if you go to a very sampradayic place, they would have a lot more importance to this devata aradhana stotrams and so on. Not that, you know, we are trying to eliminate them. This is also important because everything is intertwined with devata stotrams. But you know, you can see that that's not the primary objective here. So that's why it's 1 out of 5, right? So you would also see that kind of ratio in what we are teaching, where we are teaching very little on the devata stotram. That's why we don't want to take up something as big as Bhagavad Gita or Sahasranamam, and then that becomes an exercise in itself. So because these other things can help them learn Bhagavad Gita, Sahasranama, make sense out of them and so on by themselves. So learning those other things are more important. Not that Sahasranama, Nama, Bhagavad Gita are not important; they are important too. You know, but at the basic level, these are important. Typically, what has happened, because our school system has been abolished by the British, you know, we are not learning the regular school system way, and the only thing that remained with us was the religious aspect of it, that we continued, right? Learning Sahasranamam or Bhagavad Gita or other Devata Stotrams. We continued with that as a culture, as a group of people who are interested in our religion. But I shouldn't say religion, interested in our dharma. But you know, these other things are gone, but these other things are the real syllabus in school. So we want to cover that as much as possible. So anything to add, anybody here so
Uh,
far?
I, I can add my experience with my daughter. She goes to learn Bhagavad Gita from one of her Bal Vihar teacher, and even there the teacher doesn't explain them the meaning. She's just 7 year old, so I actually thought of teaching her the meaning from the English translation that we have, and actually found that she did not have any interest in understanding. So I just stopped it since she didn't have an interest. And then even other parents had this request to the teacher that why aren't you explaining her the meaning? And so she said, for this age, the children, it's best that they memorize and let them understand the meaning when they want to, and as they grow elder and they want to, and they will automatically find the meaning, and that would be more helpful than us forcing them to understand. Yeah, see, this is Bhagavad Gita, you should know it, this is the meaning, and they don't give two hoots about it. So, but she equally loves reciting those mantras and chanting them, even though she doesn't understand the meaning of those words. She's very happy just chanting them. So I would say just chanting the mantras is also beneficial, I
No,
guess,
it
because
definitely, definitely
I can
beneficial.
see definitely many things, many improvements in her. So yeah, I second the thought of memorizing and just building it up the meaning gradually, and not like forcing them learn this, learn that. I guess this is going absolutely right what we are doing in the course at the moment.
If you wait for a couple of years, Sachinji, she will help you understand the meaning. You don't have to look at a translation.
Exactly,
So
exactly,
that's
and yeah, let them do it on their pace. I mean, I have been like that. I mean, anyone forces me to do something, and I just run away from it, and I can see exactly the same thing from them. So and let them do what they enjoy. And I think at this age, memorizing is what they need to, and not understand the logic. I mean, that
Some,
will come as they grow.
but many times what happens is that we stop with that memorization also, Mahodaya. So we also memorize Vishnu Sahasranama or any other stotra. I don't know how many times that we have really given interest in learning the bhava and all that. That's also important, right? Like how do we make sure that we don't just stop at that point?
Yeah, that's true, and I think that will naturally come as they understand more Sanskritam. They can themselves read Bhagavad Gita or Ramayanam or Mahabharatam and understand. And Nalini Bhagini, it's like what we are doing in class now, right? So in our class, we have the ability to read Gita or Ramayanam, and then we can understand it. Even like if you don't understand a couple of words here and there, those could be referred, but for the most part we are able to understand it, right? So that's
I guess that's where learning Sanskritam will help. And the problem with us is we have no idea about Sanskrit, and we have everything in Sanskritam. So that was and we don't learn Sanskritam in school. I think that's the biggest disadvantage that we have especially in India, at least in India, I guess.
so,
We are
yeah,
all running after English,
that's
and and that's the problem. I guess if we know the language, we would still want to continue with them.
true. And this is the last part we wanted to cover. This is the part about like the things that uh, the kids need to do before they show up, right? So in this, we have got a few recommendations based on the Panchamaha Yajna system that was followed those days. The Panchamaha Yajna system actually recommended that each person does these 5 yajnas every day before they go to bed. It's some form or fashion. So Pitra Yajna is actually the minimum that we can do to for Pitra Yajna is to um, do a pranama namaskaram to our parents. So we can have the kids do the namaskaram and then be thankful for what the parents are doing to them. So that's the minimum that we are asking for. We are also going to teach some shlokas around this so that they can make it part of their daily prayers to also pray to the parents. So we have like some very nice shlokas that Adi Shankara has written on the mother, and so on. So we're already starting to teach them. So that is something that we would want them to do every day before the class starts. So in fact, the Shastra recommends that you do that even before brushing your teeth. The first thing you do after you wake up is this. A very interesting observation from Shastras is that you don't even have to, like, if you have to go do puja in your puja room, you need to have taken a shower. But to fall at the feet of your parents, you don't have to. So you can do that right away after you wake up, even before brushing the teeth. The second is Deva Yajna.
Balaji, just want to add to that is I was reading a research that was done where they're saying that the first time you wake up and you go to your parents, and before you go to bed and you spend at least 5-10 minutes with them before bed and even waking up first thing, it builds a very strong bond with parents, which is now the research is coming out and telling everyone, do that with your kid, the modern research.
That's
So,
yeah.
yeah. Go ahead, please. Yes, sorry.
So that's really good to know. So yeah, all this has to be like taken up by researchers, and somebody from Harvard or Stanford has to write a paper for us to all accept it. So the second thing is actually Deva Yajna, which is supposed to be done after taking a shower to do some puja slokas, spend like a minute or two in meditation. But one thing that the last one, focus on dinacharya also between the doing pranam to the parents and the deva yajna, and before the shower is doing some vyayama. That is, you can do some yoga or any kind of vyayama, because if your kid has not done any yoga training, something, just jumping around or using skipping ropes or something like that, they can do for like a few minutes, and we want that to be counted in school. So the idea is, like, when we do the summer camp, this hopefully the COVID thing goes away and we can do a summer camp. When we do the summer camp, we will invite like yoga accomplished yoga teachers and kalari trainers. They would actually train the kids, and they would also give a video module for every kid that the kid can take and be doing it for the next 6 months, and then till they go to the next camp. So because we don't have that the individual personalized training, we are not recommending any yoga through this coursework, because we cannot do that online, and none of us is an expert in that area either. So it's important that we get experts to guide them, and once they're guided well, then they can do yoga on a daily basis. But if they've not done yoga, some exercise is something that we're recommending. The third thing that they have to do, that is first pitrajna, that is pranam to your parents, then yoga, then snanam, then going to the puja room and spending a few minutes in front of the murtis. And then after that, the next thing that we are suggesting is bhuta yajna or bhuta bali. Bhuta bali is like taking some grains of rice or wheat, whatever is available, and handing it, just placing it somewhere for birds to eat. In India, if you have the luxury to have a cow, that will be great. But some form of being connected with your environment, with nature. And the simplest thing, if you don't have even that facility, simplest thing you could do is to water a plant at home. Even if you water a plant at home, that is sufficient, right? Something that actually helps the bhutas are other living things, something that you can help other living things. And the other thing is manushya yajna, that is to be able to be helpful to other people. This is something that we may not be able to do during COVID time, because you're not going out. One way to actually practice this is what Chandrasekharendra Saraswati Swamiji had suggested, where he had mentioned that you could take a little bit of rice, put it in a bowl every day, and the day you go to the temple or go to an ashram, some place, you can hand that as danam, so that they can cook it for the inmates, or in the ashram, or in the temple. They can use it for prasadam or whatever, right? So just have a little bit of rice or wheat or whatever, and place it aside every day. That's manushya yajna. Brahma yajna is what we do in class. There is learning. So we cover that in class. So that kind of covers the rough dinacharya that we are suggesting now. There are other aspects of dinacharya that we will teach in the camp. That we will also have them memorize the Ashtanga Hridaya dinacharya part. That way they know exactly what are all the things that they can do. But this is the minimum dinacharya that we are asking for the kids to do. If you have any questions on this, I can answer them. And I think I'm done with the explanations. We can open up for questions.
This is Trishul's dad. My name is Gurumurthy. So I have a couple of questions regarding this online schooling. The first thing is, uh, when they go to the regular school, they also get an opportunity to spend time with kids of their own age. And I believe that is also a little important for their psychological growth, because they are living in a society where, they will have to move along with kids of their own age. So now, if this is going to be a online homeschooling, I don't think they will have an opportunity to do that. And do we know, how it's going to impact them when they actually grow up, when they don't have this option to socialize themselves with kids of their own age?
So Vijaya Bhagini and Archana ji, you want to answer that?
Yeah, I don't see Vijaya Bhagini on, so I'll jump in then. So this is something that's a common question that is faced by parents who decide to homeschool their children. But there is a lot of experience with homeschooling, and it shows that kids turn out quite fine. The parents do have to make efforts. So, for instance, here and in most major cities, there are homeschooling groups. So very often, people will have messages on these groups saying, "Let's get together so that the kids can play together in the park today," or whatever. So essentially, you would have to do a certain amount of social sort of interaction, whether it's playing at your local park or in your community, depending on where you live, with other kids their age, because they do miss that part, will be missing from the school. But one thing also to the way we plan it is that we would the camps that we are talking about are a very important part of this online school. So we should have at least two camps, one in summer and one in winter, and the longer the better, because the idea is here you can have intensive learning and the kids get to know their classmates and their teachers very well in a very, it's like going camping with these people twice a year. So it will, that way they will have a lot of social interaction with them, even if they now after spending 1 month with them in a camp, when they see each other online, there will be connection. But you would have to do some local community kids, you'll have to find evening play or things like that.
Okay. I'm sorry. Did you have anything more to add on to it?
No, did that answer your question, sort of?
Yeah, it did. And I also had second part of my question. So, looking at the overall curriculum of this program, and with what was taught in our ancient gurukulams, is it not the case where we also now have those gurukulams in place as Veda Patashalas, like something that is being run by Kachi Mat, Sringeri Mat, and other ashrams also, wherein they teach the four primary Vedas along with all the other Shastras for a period of say 12 to 15 years. And in addition to that, they also now have some curriculum attached to their overall, educational years, wherein they cover English, mathematics, and some basic science to it. Because I've seen that, and I just wanted to know how different is this program compared to our traditional, Vedic studies.
That's a very good question. I think I answered that in part earlier, but I'll try to answer it again. So the idea of this is very different from a Veda Patashala. A Veda Patashala is a place where the focus is on Vedas and memorizing the Vedas, right? And the aspects that we are teaching, like for instance, teaching Leelavati and mathematics, right? Or we are teaching history, we are teaching dinacharya and so on and so forth. There are several aspects of this that is missing in the Veda Patashala. The reason, I'll tell you the reason why. See, the Veda Patashala was always present. Even when we had regular schools in India those days, we had regular schools that typically people went to, where the teachers were called upadhyayas. They were teaching regular secular education for the most part, and they were teaching education like some stotrams and so on and so forth. So that is the regular school system that we had. The Veda Patashalas were creating Veda Panditas, right? It had a different purpose altogether, while the regular school had certain other aspects of it as well. Of course, the Veda Panditas were also good at these other aspects too, because they spent a lot of time learning those as well. So so this is a different school system that is comparable to the regular school system, and can be used as an alternative to the regular school system. Veda Patashalas cannot become alternate an alternative to the regular school system. Veda Patashalas will create Veda Panditas who can get into the vritti of Paurohityam and other aspects of what a Veda Pandita typically does. Right? So I hope you understand the difference. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, you did. Thank you.
I think
Another question
we are
also
running a
on-
little over time because we have another our online classes to start pretty soon. So I think we can maybe take one question last, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry for that. Yeah.
Will there be an Arjun's father? Will there be a I understand this is going to be a full-time school, but will there be an option for parents who actually have their kids in regular school? Is there alternative course also for them?
Yeah, we already have those courses running, but these courses are after school courses. I think
Okay.
for this age, there is a course that's running called Jignasa that happens twice a week, 45 minutes session. So,
Okay.
so that goes on. If you are not able to put your kid in the online school, and if you want to put the kid in the after school program that we do, you are welcome to do so. But this is actually to give you guys a flavor of the online school.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So I understand we are short of time, but I'm just returning to that question of, how do we minimize screen time? Because this is a wonderful sort of traditional education plan that we have, and how do we make that practically workable? So, I mean, just a couple of thoughts I just wanted to throw out so people can think about it. One is, like we were talking about, the camps should be where we do a lot of intense teaching, intensive sessions. And in fact, if it is possible to do more than 2 in a year, I mean, this will be challenging for parents because these kids will actually have to be taken and you'll have to stay with them. They're too young to leave in a camp by themselves. I mean, even with people supervisors, they probably want parents at this age. So that is one, maximizing in-person learning, camp learning time is one thing, one strategy we should use. The other is, would it help if we had, split the sessions into a couple of hours in the morning and maybe a couple of hours in the evening? I don't know if that is workable at all. Of course, it depends on people's schedules, but something like that we will have to think and come up with to make this workable.
Why are we not thinking about the
think-
boarding school kind of options, Mahodaya?
Yeah, that will be a that hopefully we can do that in a year or two. We need to have enough kids for us to do something like that, but definitely we need to move towards a system like a boarding school after a certain point in time. But
I think, sorry, quickly, I wanted to add one more thing. Archana Bhagini, I really appreciate the options you put together. And I think generally, I think for everybody, we understand that this is a program in which parents' input is not only valuable and sought for, but it is going to help us shape the program, because we are, we are parents just like you are. Right. So in addition to the options that Archana Bhagini proposed, I think the third one that came up, I think Sangeeta, maybe you talked about it a little bit, is to, either using like audio, for example, so that stuff that you can just listen to. I mean, like, if it's possible for us to create audios that kids hear in their non-screen time. The fourth one is give parents maybe some material that they can teach in person, depending upon parents' time and schedules. So I think the key for me is to realize that we need 4 to 5 hours of learning time per day, which doesn't necessarily have to all come from screen. And how we divvy that up, like 4 to 5 hours of intensive learning, I think that's It's like putting the pieces of jigsaw puzzle together. So how much of that comes from screen, how much of that comes from audio, how much of that comes from maybe kids just have reading assignments that you must read this much half an hour a day or something, and then the teacher asks questions based on that. So those are some of the other alternatives we may want to think about.
All very good, suggestions. Yes, we should think about.
Also, what if there are working parents? If both parents are working, how is it going to work?
It's a tough question. I think Archana ji is also struggling with that. So those are tough questions. We don't have
So
all.
because we won't be at home, and I suppose these sessions are going to be in the regular hours, like at least in the midday or so. First, that is one thing, and another thing is the assistance from us to the children are more. So, yeah, just a question that I had in my mind.
Sir, to complement that question, is there maybe one more option could be maybe you provide the entire materials. For example, the ideal option is to be sit with as we do it now, sit and learn with the teacher. But if that is not possible for the parents, is there a way to give that material, whatever the recordings, everything to the parents, so the parents can actually go through that and teach the kids at their convenient time also?
That's exactly what
one of the
Mithil was saying
options,
earlier. Mithilji mentioned that already. So
Yeah,
Mithil is saying that parents can take up part of the teaching. Yeah, we can do that. I think there is a class coming up, so we have only just 5 minutes left. One comment that Jayashree Bhagini has mentioned is like to come to class with with something on the forehead, right? It can be a vibhuti or Gopika Chandanam or Tilakam or anything. So just that's because the idea is not to lose our symbols. One of the things that's happening in the process of decolonizing is the West is making us lose our symbols. So if we can hold on to our symbols, like the West holds on to their symbols really well, while they make us lose our symbols. So it's important for us to hold on to our symbols. So that's and that will also make it feel very ordinary or a regular thing for your kids when they do this every day. I want to see if Aparajit had anything else to add. He's been silent. Is he still in here?
Namaste. So, one thing that I would suggest for this, to reduce screen time is you can switch off the screen for prarthana and contestikaranam, but that would require the help of the parents. You should make sure that the kid is disciplined, he sits and he recites. Once I call out the name, maybe you can just unmute. You don't have to look at the screen. That's one thing. The other thing that I wanted to tell was there's this person called Nelson Dellis, and he is 4-time memory champion from the US, and he has written a book called Remember It. And he talks about how he saw his grandmother die because of Alzheimer's, and that motivated him to become a memory champion. So that's something you can use it as a reference. Only these two things, and apart from that, we have a class coming up, so I'd like to.
So, Dhanyavada everybody. Namaskar and thank you for taking the time. And we will put
afterthoughts. Sorry to interrupt. Any more afterthoughts? What email do we write to, or where do we give this feedback, or anything else that comes to mind?
Sangeeta ji?
Yeah, you can write to me, or you can write to info@agasthyagurukul.org.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dhanyavada.
Dhanyavada.
ಧನ್ಯವಾದ ಧನ್ಯವಾದ